Hi, I'm Michael Swinford. Welcome to this edition of the Veteran Voice. There's so many changes been happening lately in the area of veterans benefits that we're going to meet a very special service officer, and he's going to bring us up to date on that. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Mr. Ron McClure, my service officer. How are you doing, sir?
Fine, yourself?
It's good to see you again.
It's good to be here, Mike.
In the lead-off, we discussed that there have been some changes made. I think anytime you deal with the VA or with the military, any kind of boards of appeal, whatnot, there's always constant change, it seems like. So we want to talk about some of those things today and find out what's been going on and some of the issues that affect our veterans. What's the most important thing that's happened lately?
Mike, there's two areas we thought we probably should bring up. First is for any veteran who's ever served 90 days or more and has honorable service. The disease of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, is now presumptive for anybody who served. Doesn't matter what branch of service, whether it's male or female, as long as they serve 90 days. If they develop ALS, they should be filing for that to be a service-connected disability. Also along that line, the widow of any veteran who's died from ALS should be filing for benefits based upon that death.
Does this affect the children also, or?
No, Mike, the benefits are for the veteran or for the veteran's spouse, a widow.
Are there other areas that, say, a child would get ALS? Is there a provision for that child in anything?
No, it's just based on the veteran alone. The second area is for Vietnam veterans. There's been 3 new diseases that have been designated that are going to be presumptive for service in Vietnam. They've not got through the bureaucracy yet of actually starting to grant the disability benefits, but the veterans who have one of these diseases should be filing for them. The first one of these is Parkinson's disease. Any veteran who served in Vietnam who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, or the widow of any veteran who served in Vietnam who died from Parkinson's disease, should be filing for benefits on that. Also, B-cell leukemias, also called hairy cell leukemias. Individuals with that or their widows should be filing for benefits. The third one is the ischemic heart diseases. Ischemic, we don't hear about that much, but what it really covers is any disease of the heart that affects the flow of the blood through the heart. Not the pumping process, but the blood supply to the heart. The coronary artery disease, if somebody's had a myocardial infarction, these are presumed from service in Vietnam and exposure to Agent Orange.
Does this include the valves of the heart?
If it's caused by the flow of the blood through the heart, yes. And there's been individuals in the past who filed for heart issues to be service-connected. Vietnam veterans have, and they've been denied. Those individuals should come back in and ask for their claim to be reopened based on this new evidence. And the evidence is that it's presumed now to be caused by their service in Vietnam.
Well, if a veteran or Vietnam veteran was drawing 100%, why should he file?
Mike, the 100%, there's 2 reasons for them to file. One is if a veteran has one issue that's rated at 100%, and there are other issues that combine up to 60%, there's an additional pot of money there for the veteran, additional financial benefits. The next reason is if the veteran dies from a service-connected disability, or if it contributes to his death, then there's benefits available for that veteran's widow. And if it's already been designated as service-connected and it shows up on the death certificate, it makes that widow's claim that much easier to get approved.
How in the world do we get in touch with you?
Mike, it's hard because of starting at about 8:40 in the morning to 4:30 or later in the afternoon, I've got a veteran sitting in front of me. And I don't answer the phone when I got somebody with me. And because of that, when I don't have a veteran sitting in front of me, I'm working hard to get that paperwork submitted. Really the best way to get in touch with me is to stop in at the clinic in Paducah on a Monday or Thursday and ask to see my volunteer that works there, Hester, and schedule an appointment. If you're in the Mayfield area, stop in on a Tuesday or a Wednesday and see my volunteer there, Sarah, and schedule an appointment. Or send me an email and let me know whether or not you want to see me in Mayfield or you want to see me in Paducah, and I have the volunteer give you a phone call to schedule an appointment. The email address is my name. It's Ronald, RONALD, .McClure, that's MCCLURE, @ky.gov. Okay. And email is by far the easiest way to get in touch with me, or just to stop in at the clinics.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because I know a lot of people say, I'd like to go see a service officer, but I don't know exactly where to find somebody. And it's good that we have a way now of tracking you down, so you'll get a lot busier probably.
Well, it's hard to get any busier than what I've been lately.
Yeah. Has there been a great influx of claims from Iraq and Iran?
Not so much an influx from Iraq and Iran, but just an influx of claims. Mm-hmm. I'm filing 50% more claims this year than I did this time last year.
Mm-hmm. So what else is new? What else is coming across the board that we need to keep an eye on in the coming months?
Well, I would still encourage veterans who are not enrolled in the VA healthcare system to file to do so. They made some changes all within the past year where the limit, if the veteran is within 10% of the financial income of the limit, then they're still letting them enroll. Mm-hmm. And so a married veteran whose household income, just a veteran and a spouse, and their household income is $38,812 or less, they can still get in the system and receive treatment. Mm-hmm. Any of the veterans can actually register in the system, but if they don't have a service-connected disability or they did not serve in Vietnam and their income is over that limit, mm-hmm. they're not going to allow them to receive treatment. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, or if their income is over that amount and they're not allowed to receive treatment, I'd encourage them to seek whether or not they can file for a service-connected disability. Once they are service-connected at 10% or higher, then the VA has to allow them to be enrolled in the system.
Now, are the Priority 8 veterans, are they being allowed to enroll in?
Well, see, in Priority 8, they got a Priority 8A, B, C, D, and E.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it depends on when you first enrolled in the system as to which one of those you are. And if you're the Priority 8, shucks, I can't remember now if it's the C or the E, but that's what I'm talking about, that they're allowed to enroll, but they're not allowed to receive treatment. And those are the ones who need to file to see if they can get a service-connected disability.
They still need to get enrolled, even though they're Priority 8?
I encourage them to, and the reason being is that gives the VA then, the Veterans Health Administration portion of the VA, the ammunition to go before the central office of the VA and them to go before Congress and ask for more funding, saying we got veterans who want to receive the treatment, but we can't do it because we don't have the funds to do so. And that's really the reason that they limit the enrollment of these individuals. Mm-hmm.
Do you expect a great influx of claims from the Iraqi and Afghanistan?
Really, I don't. Traditionally, only about 30% of the veterans have ever filed for any benefits from the mm-hmm. VA. Tremendous numbers of veterans have never filed for anything for multiple reasons. And it seems like the Iraqi Freedom and the Afghanistan veterans are filing that same category, doing mm-hmm. the same things. You know, they come back home, they get married or they're already married, they got a family, and they're busy living. And it's tough to take off the time to go and sit down with somebody and to file a claim.
So you're saying essentially there's 70% of veterans out there that haven't filed, or?
That's correct, or don't even use the VA healthcare system.
I find it amazing that even if they started filing part of this 70%, that the VA could even have any clue as to what to do with all these people. I mean, they struggle now with essentially the 30%. And the VA couldn't handle that. I
don't think they could either. I mean, obviously they can't because, as you say, they're struggling with the 30% who are participating now. I know, looking at my figures for last year, the claims that I submitted, they averaged 157 days before a decision was made. Mm-hmm. And that's average. So, of course, some of them were through the system in 90 days or less, but some of them were over a year old, too.
What benefits are there for widows?
The widow's benefits fall under two things. A lot of folks think a widow gets a portion of what the veteran was drawing, and that's just simply not true. When the veteran passes away, that benefit stops. For the widow to receive any benefits, they have to file on their own right. Mm-hmm. If the veteran died from a service-connected disability, they can file and receive a thing called dependency and indemnity compensation. Mm-hmm. Big long word, we usually just say DIC. And that's a stated amount of money that they receive every month, plus enrollment in a health insurance program, which has no premium for them. That's if we can show that the death of the veteran was connected or related to their service. Other widows, there's only benefits available if that veteran served during a period of wartime. And then it's only based on her or the widower having limited income and assets. And so if they don't fall under the category on the limited income and assets, then there's not going to be a benefit there. Many widows, because they will subtract the cost of the funeral off their gross income during that first year, get benefits for 12 months. And then they do not have that figure then to subtract off their income, and the benefit goes away. But that benefit's paid on 3 levels based on that widow's health. There's the standard rate, there's the housebound rate to where the individual is able to live alone but cannot get out and about on their own. And there's the aid and attendance rate where the individual is not able to live alone. And of course, the worse the health is of the individual, always the more your health care is going to be, but also the amount of benefits that's available can go up because of that.
So again, if a lady becomes widowed, she should come and see you. Would you be able to help her with these various forms?
First off, we make a determination as to whether or not we feel like there's any probability that a claim would be approved. And if there's a probability, then yes, I help them file for that benefit.
So what else is new, Ron, that we need to talk about today?
You know, as far as new, it's just new to some people. These programs have been out there in various forms ever since World War I, and after that. Actually, some of them go back even further than that. But there's basically 4 types of claims that can be made as far as disabilities and veterans. First, for the veteran themselves, they can file for a disability that they have to be service-connected. And there's 3 things that veteran has to show. They have to show they have a period of qualifying duty. They have to show that a current diagnosis of something wrong with them, then show a connection between that diagnosis and that period of qualifying duty. And of course, that's why I encourage these younger guys to file now, because the closer to the time that you got out that you file, the easier it is to show that connection. Once that's done, and they're designated as having a service-connected disability. But along that same line, if that disability is, let's say it's rated 30%, and that issue gets worse in your life, then they ought to consider filing for a rating increase. Also, if you're service-connected for one issue and it causes additional problems, 2 examples I see a lot of. Somebody has a bad left knee, and because they favor the left knee, they wear out the right knee. Then the right knee can be service-connected secondary to the left knee. Or if somebody's got diabetes, and the diabetes causes, a diabetic retinopathy, or causes peripheral neuropathy in the hands or the feet, then they can file for those issues to be service-connected secondary to the diabetes.
Did you have to go to school to learn how to say those big words?
Those are the easy ones.
You sound like my doctor here.
Those are the easy ones. There's some in there I just give up on.
Just give up on, huh?
But the second program is for veterans themselves. It's only for wartime veterans. And it's not combat veterans necessarily, but served during a period of wartime. And these dates have been designated by Congress. And they have to serve at least 1 day in that period, and a total of 90 days. And this is for a non-service connected disabilities. If the veteran's not able to have gainful employment because of different disabilities, so a wartime veteran, they got limited income and assets, then there's help for them there from the VA.
I know for a long time with myself, I had that, I don't want anything to do with the VA type thing. I just don't want to go there for whatever reason. I do not remember. It's just something you hear, somebody says something negative, and it would behoove everyone to check out the VA system and find out what they can help you with. And now, if I'm going to file a claim, isn't there a factor of evidence that has to be produced or was produced at some point to back up your claim?
The VA won't grant anything unless they got the appropriate evidence in front of them. Now, we talked about having a qualifying period of active duty. You have to show your documentation of your release from active duty to show that you have a qualifying period of active duty. You have to have a diagnosis, so we've got to submit the medical evidence showing that you have this particular diagnosis. You have to show a connection between that diagnosis and that period of active duty, so you have to provide evidence showing it. For most issues, if you file within 12 months of leaving service, they're going to presume it was caused by that period of active duty. After 12 months, for most issues, you got to document the fact that the issue you have today is related to that issue you had while you was on active duty. So the evidence is what gets them to say yes or no. And many rating decisions I see where they have been denied, it just doesn't say you don't have this, you don't have that. It just says there is no evidence of a diagnosis. There's no evidence of the diagnosis you have today being connected to the issue you had in service. So that's the reason most claims get turned down, is from the lack of evidence.
How do you gain evidence on something that happened 45 years ago in Vietnam? How do you find out, was there a rocket attack or a mortar attack at that particular place or time?
The records that the units kept are still available. Every battalion level organization had a combat operations center, or some called them tactical operations center, and they had a journal file, and that journal file is still available. Every time there was a contact, there was a spot report or a contact report that had to be submitted, and that's in those journal files. Every time that post or that fire base you were on received incoming fire, there was a record made of that that they had so many rounds of incoming fire, etc. Those reports are available. If the veteran can narrow it down to a 90-day window of the time frame they want something to look for, usually when we present that to the VA will research that unit's records and determine whether or not that evidence is there.
Wouldn't it be a good idea for the men and women in Afghanistan and Iraq to keep a diary of sorts on their own?
That's interesting you say that. I've had a case I've worked with, and the individual was a supply clerk, and he was filing for service connected for hearing loss. And this is during World War II. And unfortunately, there was a fire in '73 that burned a lot of the Army's records up through December of '59. And this individual's records would burn. And he was denied because his MOS was a supply clerk, and they said it was not probable that he was exposed to loud noise. Well, he had kept a diary. And this diary, he actually had in there entries, even though he was a supply clerk, there was entries in there that on such and such a date, went to gun pit number 2, we fired 90 rounds today. The next day, I was in gun pit number 4, and we fired 116 rounds, because he was a supply clerk in an anti-aircraft artillery battalion. And so that diary is what made the difference in his claim being approved or not.
Well, it looks like anything unusual out of the ordinary should be noted somewhere for the individual to take care of his own evidence, as opposed to allowing someone else to be in charge of it.
Yes, and you comment on that, and I've had several individuals come in who've got their original medical records from service with them, especially if individuals from the Guard and Reserve seem to have a tendency to end up with the originals themselves. And unfortunately, the VA will not work off of copies. They're going to have those original records. So when an individual shows up with those original records, I try to convince them, let me make copies for them to keep the copies and send their originals in. But you're right. And also I talked about the MOS and that. You know, you and I know that many soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors have an MOS, but they actually end up doing something else. And it's very good for them to be able to document that they actually worked outside their MOS in these different areas.
Yeah. Well, during wartime, especially in Vietnam, you were never completely safe anywhere you were. And there was a lot of what they call defensive combat positions, where you essentially tried to do a somewhat normal day's work or night's work, but your weapons are at the ready, and you've been harassing fire, and you have all these other things, and at some point, it doesn't matter what your rating is or what you're supposed to do, you have to defend your compound or your base or whatever. And it takes everybody to
Absolutely, but in these cases, the VA is going to demand evidence of that. And that's where buddy statements come in handy.
Yeah.
If you've kept up with individuals, or if you can learn that your organization has a reunion or an association where you can contact and fit somebody who was in that same location as you were at that time, their statements carry a lot of weight then. Also, there are different organizations such as the American Legion, the VFW, the DAV, in their magazines you'll find places where people are writing there for wanting to get in touch with somebody who was at Phuket with me in 1968 who could write me a statement type thing. And if you ever see one of those for an individual, you should contact them and help them. And in the same mode, other individuals will be helping other individuals file for these benefits and be granted them.
What's the single biggest problem that you have in filing claims?
It's evidence.
Evidence.
Evidence. You know, everything from Some of it is just the tardiness of the individual I'm working with getting the evidence to me. A simple thing as a marriage certificate so that they can get additional benefits because they got a wife.
Doesn't everything have a time frame that the VA requires you do this within 30 days or 60 days?
The VA sends letters asking for a response within 30 days or 60 days. Most of the times, these are recommendations. From the day they receive your claim for a benefit, you've actually got 12 months to get that evidence in. But if you think about it is, they don't want to have to wait 12 months. And so they will send you a letter asking you to respond within 30 days. If you don't respond, and they continue the march to make a decision even before that 12 months is up. So it's good to respond to those. The critical ones, there's a couple of times, such as if you're in appeal, and they send you a thing called a Form 9. And if you don't respond to that Form 9 within 60 days, your appeal doesn't exist anymore. And that one is critical. Other ones are if you've got a rating, let's say you're rated 60% for an issue and they propose to lower that, they give you a time frame to respond back to that. If you don't respond back, they will automatically then reduce that rating at that time frame. But it gives you, it's normally a 60-day window, and that gives you time to gather evidence to show that your situation has not improved, and that, to keep that rating upper.
How many levels of appeal does one go through or can go through? Or
Well, the initial appeal, you'll get a letter back asking, well, first off, you don't even ask to appeal. You submit a notice of disagreement. If you write a letter to the VA saying you disagree with the decision or you say use the word appeal, you automatically are in appeals. They actually call that first letter a notice of disagreement. Once you've done that, they're going to send you a letter offering you two routes to go. One's a decision review officer process or a post-decision review process. Then the second one is the traditional appeal process. In most cases, I recommend that the individuals go with the post-decision review process because it's a lot shorter. And even if you don't get satisfaction from that, you still then can ask for the traditional appeal. The traditional appeal, the ones that they're hearing today, were submitted 2 years ago, the ones out of the office in Louisville anyway. And so we try to avoid getting into that time lag on an appeal process. If you turn down at the regional office, you can appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals. And that goes to the central office in Washington, D.C., although they have the appeals sometimes are actually held there in Louisville for individuals in this area, which is pretty standard. And if that's disapproved, you can still go to the Court of Appeals of Veterans Claims.
So actually you've got several layers there that you might have to work through.
Absolutely.
So I think patience is a virtue in that case.
Well, here again, even in the appeal, the traditional appeal process, actually what you're appealing is the fact that the VA did something wrong. And it's tough to really win on one of those areas there. If you can present the evidence, you're going to get your claim approved.
So that's what it all boils down to. Probably one of the most important things to remember for veterans of past and veterans to come is to keep a trail somewhere.
To have that trail. And when the VA asks for something, don't get excited and worry about why. The why is because they're trying to say yes, and they can't say yes unless they get that. So just get the information, get it to them so they can say yes.
Heard a little good news lately that about a appeals court decision about In God We Trust. Do you know anything about that?
I just know what I heard on the radio yesterday. It was a individual in California that evidently had filed, not so much the In God We Trust, but the one I'm thinking about is the individual had filed for under God to be removed from the Pledge of Allegiance. And I understand the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in California turned that down. And I understand another court, I don't know if it's another decision, I don't know if it's the Ninth Court or the Supreme Court, but also upheld the In God We Trust on our coins.
Well, that's some good news.
That's good news.
After so many people trying to tear down so much over the years, it's good to hear an affirmation of our founding fathers, what they believed in, and it makes a veteran feel proud that at least we're standing up somewhere.
Absolutely.
What about the budget for the VA in the coming years?
You know, with what I do, I don't get involved with about the budget. I have to work with what's there, not what's proposed, what might be, what could be. I've got to work with what's there. It's always a political hot potato, the budget, not just with the VA, but right now throughout everything it seems like. Shucks, I'm more concerned about the state budget, the I'd like to see the state have another individual in this area doing the work that I do, but the budget for the state right now is preventing that from happening.
Yeah. Does the current political storm over health care for civilians, is this in any way going to affect the veteran?
You know, I haven't kept up on that. I was discussing it with, I got a brother that's a veteran that's retired out of service too, and he was commenting with what he had been reading, that the issues with the VA healthcare system wouldn't go away. I don't know. I just don't know, Mike.
Yeah. Well, Ron, is there anything else that we need to discuss today that's on the horizon perhaps, or something that we're going to have to deal with down the road?
Well, Mike, along again for Vietnam veterans, for the sailors, it's always been an issue with the sailors who've been aboard ship, getting them service connected for issues presumptive to exposure to Agent Orange. Recently, the VA came out with a list of ships that if the sailors were on these ships at the times that they were off the coast of Vietnam, they were presumed they were exposed. The most prevalent one is the LSTs. Any LST served in Vietnam, they presumed everybody on that ship was exposed to Agent Orange. Of course, the SWIFT boats, the PCFs, the PBRs, the river boats. But there's also a few destroyers that are in the list that are presumed to be exposed to Agent Orange. I don't have that list on my mind, but there's about 5 or 6 destroyers. And then there was a fire support craft. There's flotilla number, I think it's number 93, and there's 4 vessels in that group. If you were on those ships when they were off the coast of Vietnam, you're presumed to be exposed to Agent Orange. And this is a pretty recent, it came out about 3 months ago.
Well, that's interesting. Do you have any claims for asbestos?
I do work claims for asbestos. There again, the biggest issue is you have to have a diagnosis that's related to it. Asbestosis is the most basic diagnosis. They don't presume that COPD or emphysema comes from asbestos. Of course, that cancer, the mesothelioma, however you say it, that one too. It's not an easy one to get approved. Just saying it's used up below the wrappings on the ship with exposed asbestos won't do it. I've worked with one gentleman who actually used to mix the stuff up aboard ship. He was a pipe fitter, and he had to pour the powder into the bucket and pour the water into it and stirred it up, and he's been approved. You got to show something other than just it was in the area where I was.
Well, Ron, I thank you for all the information you've passed along to us today. We'll have you back again as conditions warrant in the veteran community and with the VA and with claims, so you can give us an update every now and then. We appreciate you being with us. Good as always.
Mike, it's been my pleasure. I enjoy doing it.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us on this another edition of The Veteran Voice. I hope you've learned something today that we've talked about that may help you in your situation, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So long.